Hi, have you ever wondered that music may create an art? I have the perfect composer to introduce. In this video, we will be discussing one of his major works to resemble how artistry he brings through his music. Nice to meet you, and I'm your speaker, Li Mingyi. Claudie Debussy, known as Debussy, is a French composer who born on 22nd August 1862. First to be an impressionist and symbolist painter and a composer. Although he strenuously resisted the term, however, he still holds the late 19th and 20th century of the most important composers. Eventually, he died in his house on 25th of March 1918. His major works included Clair de Lune, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, the Opera, and La Mer. In the early days of Debussy, showed talent as a pianist. A child genius was discovered by Madame Maudie de Ferrery, who was a close friend with Frédéric Chopin, which is a Polish composer. In fact, Debussy had this opportunity to enroll into the Paris Conservatory and studied his music degree in 1873. Even though Debussy was asked to skip music history and theory classes, failed several times, got him a chance of winning the Grand Prix de Rome. What is Grand Prix de Rome? Grand Prix de Rome is a portal to provide an opportunity to the young French artists, awarded by the French government to study in Rome between 1663 and 1968. Despite the fact he wins the title of the Grand Prix de Rome, he was given a scholarship of staying 3 years in Villa Medici, Rome. This chance enables Debussy to pursue his creativity work in an ideal condition workplace. In the middle life of Debussy, he got influenced by some Russian composers like Mussorgsky, Tchaikovsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, Balakirev, and Borodin. One of his famous works, Pallades, was directly inspired by Mussorgsky's opera. Richard Wagner was one of the biggest influences toward Debussy. After Debussy finished his Wagner period, he was highly interested in non-Western music. Non-Western music is also known as world music. Non-Western music is a music making as a functional part of everyday life in which the society as a whole participates. Non-Western music is a more improvised than a theoretical music, and it survives solely through oral transmission. Debussy was fascinated by unorthodox method to non-Western composing. In particular, he was fascinated to a Javanese gamelan, a music group from Java Island that played a range of exotic instruments, including gongs and mixers that created a laundry of colors and sound where he first heard on the Paris exhibition. He was also motivated by the French Impressionist artists such as Monet, while developing a new compositional language. However, Debussy was not keen to highlight his non-Western inspiration directly from his music. Rather, he used his non-Western inspiration to form more generally his own style of music. Among Debussy's major works, in my opinion, La Mer was the best representative and the greatest works that Debussy ever composed. La Mer, which represents the sea, was the first and foremost to resemble the Mediterranean Sea. Before the Franco-Prussian War boomed in the French capital, Victorine Debussy, which is his mother, took Debussy and his siblings to visit her sister-in-law in Cannes. Debussy first explored the sea when Debussy was 8 years old. Young Debussy remained a sweet and unforgettable memory of his trip to the Big Blue Sea. La Mer was composed between 1903 and 1905. This piece was premiered in Paris in October 1905. La Mer is also one of the 3 symphonic sketches for orchestra. Initially, La Mer was really not well received. Even some who had been strong supporters of Debussy's works were enthusiastic, but it quickly became one of Debussy's most admired and frequently performed orchestral works. It is because Le Maire is filled with this sense of ephemeral and intangible, experiencing this music as tremendous. Let's talk deeply into Le Maire. Le Maire features three loosely ABA structural movements. A schedule is the second movement, which contrasts with the opening and finale movements of the symphony. Between the first and the third movement, there is some consistency with the return of a subject from the first movement to the finale. The third movement's final key signature and chord are in D flat major. Most of the early movements are similarly signed by D flat, although it often used moods and strange scales in the settings of often ambiguous harmonies. Furthermore, as a prodigy child, Debussy even wanted to be a painter when he was young. However, Debussy never learned how to brush, but he knew how to imply musical notes to portray what he imagines. Despite the fact that the sense of artistry in him, the wave was created by a Japanese engraver called Hokusai, was applied as the cover for the piece. How amazing that he composed musical portrait the exact feeling of the sea. Just like Fencross Leisure suggested, it is futile to try and understand Le Maire without the elements of its musical substance. The creativity of Debussy is just wildly explored and well executed in his piece. Finally, Debussy also mentioned, love of art does not depend on explanations. When we really listen to music, we hear immediately what we need to hear. He also suggested that it is very important that music must have a sense of communicative and transformative way to reach out. How Debussy contributes his whole life to music is just remarkable and implacable to study in a way by learning how he went through lots of struggles and hard work in the name of artistry and communication, a dedication and driving force to imply. Thank you for joining this journey with me. If you are interested and wanted to learn more about Debussy, do check out this QR code. Thank you so much for watching. Hope we will meet again. Bye.